The Zephyrian War fleet hung in the darkness beyond Pluto's orbit like a collection of metallic predators, their hulls gleaming with the cold efficiency of a civilization that had perfected the art of conquest over 3 millennia. Admiral Keth Var stood on the command deck of the flagship Dominion's Edge, his 4 arms crossed behind his back as he studied the tactical displays showing the third planet from the local star. Earth. The name felt alien on his tongue when he spoke it aloud, which he rarely did. To the Zephyrians, it was simply Target World 847C, another primitive civilization to be absorbed into their ever-expanding empire. His tactical officers moved with practiced precision around the command center, their movements synchronized like a well-oiled machine designed for one purpose: the complete subjugation of inferior species. Status report. Keth Var commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had orchestrated the fall of 17 worlds. Subcommander Veltar approached, her data pad glowing with intelligence reports. The indigenous species has achieved basic space flight and nuclear technology. Preliminary scans indicate they possess no energy shields, no plasma weaponry, and their largest vessels barely exceed 200 meters in length. They appear to be in a state of constant tribal warfare among themselves. Keth Var's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. Primitive indeed. What are their military capabilities? Laughable, Admiral. They use crude chemical propulsion for their spacecraft and still rely heavily on projectile weapons. Our analysts estimate complete subjugation within 72 standard hours once the assault begins. The resistance phase should last no longer than a few rotations. The Admiral nodded, studying the holographic display of Earth that rotated slowly before him. Blue and green with swirling white clouds, it looked remarkably similar to dozens of other worlds he had conquered. The pattern was always the same: initial shock at first contact, desperate attempts at negotiation, futile resistance, and, finally, submission. The humans would follow the same trajectory as every other species the Zephyrian Empire had encountered. Begin Phase 1, Keth Var ordered. Launch the observation probes. I want detailed scans of their major population centers and military installations. Across the solar system, metallic seeds, no larger than asteroids, began their silent journey toward Earth, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to human detection systems. These probes had mapped the defenses of countless worlds, always finding the same thing: armies arranged for warfare against their own kind, never imagining that threats could come from the stars. 3 days later, the probes transmitted their data back to the waiting fleet. The information confirmed everything the Zephyrians had expected. Earth's military forces were scattered across numerous nation-states, each suspicious of the others. Their weapons, while impressive by primitive standards, were designed for planetary combat. Most telling of all, their space-based defenses were virtually non-existent. The humans have approximately 200 orbital satellites, Veltar reported as she analyzed the probe data. None appear to be weaponized. Their space stations are purely scientific or commercial in nature. They maintain a small number of military spacecraft, but these are clearly designed for transport rather than combat. Keth Var studied the detailed scans of Earth's major cities. Millions of humans packed into dense urban centers, completely unaware that their world was being cataloged for conquest. Their ignorance was almost endearing in its completeness. "What are their communication networks?" he asked. "Primitive, but extensive. Radio waves, fiber optic cables, and satellite networks. Intercepting their communications has been trivial. We've learned their major languages and governmental structures. They appear to have several competing power blocks, each maintaining substantial military forces primarily aimed at deterring the others." The Admiral's tactical mind immediately recognized the advantage this presented. Divided they stand, divided they'll fall. Have our xenopsychologists completed their analysis of human behavioral patterns? Yes, Admiral. The psychological profile indicates a species prone to panic when confronted with superior force. Historical data suggests they typically surrender when faced with overwhelming odds, preferring survival to futile resistance. Their own military doctrine emphasizes the importance of maintaining morale, suggesting a fundamental weakness when that morale is broken. HFY felt the familiar satisfaction that came with a well-planned operation reaching its final stages. The Zephyrian military machine had reduced conquest to a science. Every variable had been measured, every contingency planned for. The humans would react exactly as predicted because every species ultimately reacted the same way. Excellent. Begin Phase 2. Deploy the Intimidation Squadron. 12 Zephyrian destroyers broke formation from the main fleet, their sleek forms accelerating toward Earth at a speed that would bring them into orbit within 6 hours. Each destroyer was over 800 meters long, bristling with energy weapons that could level a city from orbit. More importantly, they were designed to be seen, to inspire the terror that preceded surrender. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The destroyers would position themselves over Earth's major population centers in full view of the humans. The sight of clearly alien warships hanging in their skies would trigger the panic response the xenopsychologists had predicted. Within hours, Earth's governments would be frantically attempting to establish communication, ready to discuss terms of surrender. As the Intimidation Squadron departed, HFY turned his attention to the post-conquest planning. Earth's population was substantial enough to provide a significant labor force once properly conditioned. The planet's resources, while not exceptional, would contribute meaningfully to the Empire's industrial capacity. Most importantly, Earth's location would serve as an excellent staging point for expansion into this spiral arm of the galaxy. Admiral, one of his communications officers called out, "We're receiving the first human transmissions in response to our probe activities. They appear to be attempting to establish contact." HFY's mandibles clicked again. Right on schedule. Ignore them for now. Let their anxiety build. Fear is our greatest weapon against primitives. But even as he spoke, something nagged at the Admiral's consciousness. The probe reports had included some anomalies in human behavior that didn't quite fit the standard pattern. Their entertainment media, for instance, was filled with stories of resistance against impossible odds. Their historical records showed a disturbing tendency to continue fighting even when victory was mathematically impossible. The Admiral dismissed these concerns as quickly as they arose. Every species had its cultural peculiarities, but none of that mattered when faced with the reality of superior firepower. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered worlds with proud warrior traditions, planets full of beings who claimed they would rather die than submit. In the end, when faced with the choice between extinction and absorption into the Empire, they all chose survival. Humans would be no different. As the Intimidation Squadron approached Earth's outer atmosphere, automated systems began broadcasting the standard conquest proclamation in the major human languages. The message was simple and direct: surrender immediately or face annihilation. Resistance was futile. Compliance would be rewarded with integration into the glorious Zephyrian Empire. The human response, when it came, was not what Admiral HFY expected. Instead of panic surrender, Earth's communication networks exploded with activity. Military forces around the globe began mobilizing with a speed that surprised the Zephyrian analysts. Rather than the predicted collapse of morale, the humans seemed to be rallying. "Admiral," Veltar reported, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty. "The humans are not responding according to projections. Instead of surrender negotiations, they appear to be preparing for armed resistance." HFY studied the tactical displays showing increased activity around Earth's military installations. Impossible. They must realize the futility of resistance. Perhaps they simply need more time to process the situation. Proceed with Phase 3. The destroyers moved into position over Earth's major cities, their massive hulls casting shadows over millions of humans below. Surely now, faced with the undeniable reality of alien superiority, the humans would see reason. But the response that came from Earth's surface was not a plea for mercy or terms of surrender. It was a single message, broadcast simultaneously from every major government on Earth, transmitted on every available frequency, and delivered in the steady voice of someone who had clearly given the matter careful thought. To the alien fleet currently threatening our world, we have received your demand for surrender. Our response is as follows. We respectfully decline. If you wish to take our world, you are welcome to try. But understand this, you're not the first to underestimate humanity, and you will not be the last to regret it. We suggest you reconsider your position while you still have ships to retreat with. Admiral HFY stared at the communication transcript in disbelief. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to the intimidation squadron with what could only be described as a threat. Run the message through linguistic analysis, he ordered. Perhaps something was lost in translation, but the analysis confirmed what the Admiral already knew. The humans had just told the most powerful military force in the galaxy to back down or face the consequences. It was so absurd that HFY almost found it amusing. Almost. Very well, he said finally. If the humans insist on learning this lesson the hard way, we shall oblige them. Signal the intimidation squadron. Begin orbital bombardment of military targets. Minimal casualties. We want them demoralized, not extinct. The first energy bolts from the Zephyrian destroyers lanced down through Earth's atmosphere, targeting what appeared to be the humans' most advanced military installations. The weapons were set to minimum power, designed to demonstrate overwhelming superiority without causing excessive damage to infrastructure that would soon belong to the Empire. The Admiral expected the bombardment to break human resistance within hours. Instead, it seemed to have the opposite effect. Reports began flooding in from the destroyer's observation systems. Rather than cowering in terror, humans were evacuating their cities in an orderly fashion while their military forces dispersed to hidden locations. Even more puzzling, civilian populations were actively assisting in military operations, transforming entire urban areas into defensive positions with a coordination that spoke of extensive prior planning. Admiral, Veltar approached with another data pad, her expression troubled. Our intelligence analysts are recommending a revision of the human psychological profile. Initial observations may have been incomplete. HFY took the pad and read the updated analysis. What he found there made his blood run cold. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by the invasion. Their entertainment media wasn't filled with stories of hopeless resistance as a form of escapism. It was a form of preparation. Their constant tribal warfare wasn't a sign of primitive thinking. It was training. For the first time in his long career, Admiral HFY began to suspect that the Zephyrian Empire might have made a serious miscalculation. On the surface of Earth, in hidden bunkers and mobile command centers, human military leaders were implementing plans that had been decades in the making. Plans based on the assumption that any alien species capable of reaching Earth would possess overwhelming technological superiority. Plans that took that technological gap as a given and worked around it. The humans had prepared for war, but not the kind of war the Zephyrians expected. They had prepared for the kind of war that couldn't be won with superior firepower alone. They had prepared for the kind of war where the side with better technology didn't automatically win. They had prepared for a war where human ingenuity, determination, and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness would be the deciding factors. As night fell over the embattled planet, Admiral HFY found himself staring at tactical displays that made no sense according to 3 millennia of conquest doctrine. The humans should have been broken by now. Instead, they were just getting started. And in the depths of space, the main Zephyrian fleet waited for word that Earth had fallen, completely unaware that they were about to receive their first lesson in why you should never underestimate a species that considers impossible odds to be a personal challenge rather than a reason to surrender. Captain Sarachun crouched in the ruins of what had been the International Space Station's ground control facility 12 hours earlier. The Zephyrian energy blast had turned the building into twisted metal and concrete, but the humans had learned long ago not to put all their eggs in one basket. The real control center was 30 feet underground, hardened against nuclear attack, and now serving its first extraterrestrial purpose. Status report, she called out to her team, her voice echoing in the cramped bunker that had become the coordination hub for Earth's space-based resistance. Lieutenant Martinez looked up from his console, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool underground air. The alien destroyers are maintaining position over major cities. They seem to be waiting for us to surrender after that light show they put on. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The aliens had made their first mistake by assuming humans would react like every other species they'd conquered. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for over 50 years, ever since the first radio telescopes had detected artificial signals from deep space. What's our satellite situation? Better than they think, Martinez replied. They destroyed our obvious military satellites, but the civilian network is still mostly intact. More importantly, they don't seem to have detected our sleeper assets. The sleeper assets were perhaps humanity's greatest secret. For decades, ostensibly civilian satellites have been quietly modified with hidden military capabilities. Communication satellites that could jam enemy transmissions, weather satellites equipped with surveillance gear that could peer through alien cloaking technology, and, most importantly, a network of small satellites that appear to be space junk, but were actually equipped with kinetic kill vehicles. What about ground forces? Staff Sergeant Rodriguez answered from across the bunker. All major military units have dispersed according to Plan Omega. The aliens hit our bases, but they were already empty. Our people are in position in urban areas and mountain strongholds. Civilian evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule. Sarah nodded. Plan Omega had been developed by military strategists who understood that any alien invasion would begin with attempts to destroy humanity's conventional military capability. The plan assumed that Earth's regular armed forces would be outgunned from the start, so it focused on preserving personnel and equipment while transitioning to asymmetric warfare as quickly as possible. The key insight had been simple. Aliens who could travel between stars would likely have experience conquering other worlds. They would expect certain patterns of resistance and response. The only way to gain an advantage was to do things they hadn't seen before. Initiate Phase 2 of the counterstrike, Sarah ordered. Around the globe, seemingly innocent civilian infrastructure began revealing its true purpose. Cell phone towers activated hidden broadcasting arrays that began jamming Zephyrian communications. Internet server farms switched to military AI systems that had been disguised as commercial data processing. Most significantly, thousands of amateur radio operators began broadcasting on frequencies specifically chosen to interfere with the alien sensor networks. The effect on the Zephyrian destroyers was immediate and disturbing. What is this interference? Subcommander Veltar demanded as her ship's communication systems began experiencing systematic disruption. Our sensors are being jammed, but we're detecting no military transmissions. Her communications officer, a young Zephyrian named Teklos, looked up from his console in confusion. The jamming appears to be coming from civilian population centers, but the signals are too weak to be effective against our systems. Yet, somehow, our communications are degrading. What the Zephyrians didn't understand was that human engineers had spent decades studying the mathematical principles behind advanced communication systems. While they couldn't replicate alien technology, they could identify its theoretical vulnerabilities. The seemingly weak human signals weren't trying to overpower Zephyrian systems. They were exploiting resonance frequencies and harmonic interference patterns that created cascade failures in the aliens' more sophisticated networks. It was the electronic equivalent of a virus, designed specifically to turn the aliens' technological superiority against them. Aboard the flagship Dominion's Edge, Admiral Kethvar stared at reports that defied explanation. His intimidation squadron was losing operational effectiveness, even though the humans had no apparent ability to damage their ships. How are primitives with basic radio technology disrupting our communications? He demanded. The chief science officer, Mordeth, approached with obvious reluctance. Admiral, our analysts believe the humans are using a form of mathematical warfare we've never encountered. Instead of trying to match our technology, they're exploiting properties of wave mechanics that we may have overlooked in our system designs. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in irritation. Elaborate. Our communication systems are designed for efficiency and power, optimized for overcoming the interference typically encountered in space. But the humans aren't using typical interference. They're using thousands of small transmitters to create specific frequency patterns that cause our systems to essentially jam themselves. The Admiral stared at his science officer in disbelief. You're telling me that our ships are being defeated by theoretical mathematics? Not defeated, Admiral, but certainly compromised. The humans appear to have weaponized applied physics in ways our strategists never anticipated. Before Kethvar could respond, another crisis emerged. The tactical displays began showing movement from Earth's surface that made no sense according to established invasion protocols. Admiral, the tactical officer called out urgently. We're detecting massive civilian movement, but not in the expected pattern. Instead of fleeing from our ships, the humans appear to be surrounding our landing zones. The Admiral studied the tactical display in growing confusion. Standard doctrine called for landing troops in areas cleared by orbital bombardment, establishing secure perimeters, and expanding outward. The humans should have been retreating from these areas, allowing the Zephyrian ground forces to establish control. Instead, millions of human civilians were moving toward the landing zones, but not in panic. The movement was organized, deliberate, and completely contrary to every psychological profile the Zephyrians had developed. What are they doing? Veltar asked, her voice carrying a note of unease that Admiral Kethvar shared. They got their answer an hour later when the first Zephyrian shuttles attempted to land. The landing craft descended toward what had been identified as an optimal landing zone, a large flat area outside a major human city with good sight lines and defensible terrain. The pilots expected to find the area either deserted or perhaps lightly defended by scattered human military units. Instead, they found something that would haunt Zephyrian strategic planning for generations to come. The landing zone was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of human civilians, but they weren't there to fight. They were there to help. As the alien shuttles descended, the humans began doing something that no conquered species had ever done before. They started taking pictures. Thousands of cameras, video recorders, and live streaming devices captured every detail of the alien landing. Within minutes, high-definition footage of Zephyrian troops disembarking from their shuttles was being broadcast to every corner of the Earth and uploaded to communication satellites for retransmission into deep space. But the humans weren't just documenting the invasion, they were studying it. Target their weapons systems, the shuttle commander ordered as his troops emerged to find themselves surrounded by a sea of humanity. Disperse these crowds immediately. The Zephyrian soldiers raised their energy weapons, but before they could fire, something unprecedented happened. The human crowd began to move with a coordination that spoke of extensive planning. Some civilians produced large mirrors and reflective surfaces, others deployed modified laser pointers and industrial lighting systems. Within seconds, the landing zone was flooded with reflected and concentrated light from thousands of sources. The Zephyrians' visual sensors, designed to handle the subtle lighting variations of space combat, were completely overwhelmed by the chaotic light patterns. I can't see anything, one of the soldiers reported. The humans are using some kind of optical warfare, but that was only the beginning. As the Zephyrian troops stumbled blindly in the artificial light storm, the humans began the next phase of their plan. Air horns, car alarms, industrial sirens, and thousands of musical instruments combined to create an acoustic assault that turned the landing zone into a cacophony of sound. The Zephyrians' sensitive hearing, evolved for the quiet environment of space, was brutally overloaded by the sustained noise assault. Within minutes, the elite soldiers who had conquered 17 worlds were reduced to stumbling, disoriented figures trying desperately to retreat to their shuttles. "This is impossible," the shuttle commander transmitted to his superiors. The humans are using civilian infrastructure as military weapons. They've turned their own population into a tactical asset. Admiral Kethvar listened to the reports from the landing zone with growing disbelief. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Empire had faced every conceivable form of military resistance. They had fought warrior species with advanced weapons, hive minds with perfect coordination, and artificial intelligences with superior strategic planning. But they had never faced an entire species that treated an invasion like a community project. "Recall the landing forces," he ordered reluctantly. "Reassess the situation." As the Zephyrian shuttles retreated from Earth's surface, human activity reached a fever pitch. The successful defense of the landing zones had energized the entire planet. News networks that should have been paralyzed by the invasion were instead broadcasting detailed analysis of alien technology and tactical capabilities. Universities were hosting emergency conferences where physicists, engineers, and strategists collaborated on ways to exploit weaknesses in Zephyrian systems. Online forums exploded with creative suggestions for everything from chemical countermeasures to psychological warfare tactics. Most unnervingly for the aliens, humans began treating the invasion like a puzzle to be solved rather than a catastrophe to be endured. Admiral Mordeath approached with yet another disturbing report. "Our intelligence analysis suggests the humans are reverse engineering our technology in real time. They're using the footage from the landing zones to identify vulnerabilities in our equipment." Kethvar examined the data with growing alarm. Human academic institutions were dissecting alien technology with a thoroughness that bordered on obsessive. Within hours of the failed landing, human scientists had published detailed analyses of Zephyrian energy weapons, armor systems, and even tactical doctrine. More disturbing still, they were sharing this information freely with anyone who wanted it. They're not treating this as a military conflict, he realized. They're treating it as a scientific collaboration. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrian Empire's military advantage had always been based on technological superiority and information control. But humans seemed incapable of keeping secrets from each other, especially when those secrets might help in the defense of their world. Every piece of alien technology captured or observed was immediately shared with the global scientific community. Every tactical pattern identified was broadcast to military units worldwide. The humans had turned their entire species into a distributed intelligence network focused on a single goal: understanding and defeating the invaders. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's unusual." The message, when it came through, was unlike anything in the Zephyrian military's experience. Instead of a demand for negotiation or a plea for mercy, it was an academic paper titled Preliminary Analysis of Extrasolar Military Technology and Suggested Countermeasures, authored by something called the Emergency Coalition of Earth Universities. The paper included detailed diagrams of Zephyrian equipment, mathematical analyses of their energy weapons, and, most incredibly, a peer-reviewed assessment of the alien strategic and tactical doctrine complete with suggested improvements. Admiral Kethvar read the document twice before the full implication hit him. The humans weren't just resisting the invasion. They were critiquing it, and their critique was devastatingly accurate. As night fell over the embattled planet for the second time, the Admiral found himself facing an enemy unlike any the Empire had ever encountered. An enemy that turned every disadvantage into an opportunity, every defeat into a learning experience, and every challenge into a collaborative problem-solving exercise. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethvar began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had bitten off more than it could chew. Dr. Elena Vasquez had never expected her career in material science to involve alien invasion, but then again, nobody really plans for that kind of thing. She stood in the converted subway tunnel that now served as Research Lab 7, one of dozens of underground facilities that had sprung up across the globe in the past week. The concrete walls were lined with hastily assembled equipment: electron microscopes, spectrometers, and computers running simulations that would have been impossible just days earlier. Around her, some of the brightest minds in human science worked with an urgency born of necessity and fueled by the kind of adrenaline that comes from knowing the fate of your species hangs in the balance. "What have we got on the alien metal samples?" Elena asked Dr. James Park, a metallurgist who had been working nonstop since fragments of Zephyrian technology had been recovered from the failed landing attempts. James looked up from his analysis, his eyes red from exhaustion, but bright with excitement. "It's incredible, Elena. This material has properties we've only theorized about. The molecular structure suggests they've mastered room temperature fusion bonding, but there's something else, something that doesn't make sense." Elena moved closer to examine the microscopic fragment that had cost 3 human lives to recover. "What do you mean?" "The material is incredibly strong, but it's also predictable. Look at these stress patterns." James pulled up a holographic display showing the molecular structure of the alien metal. "It's optimized for specific types of stress, the kind you'd encounter in space combat or planetary bombardment. But it has weaknesses." Elena studied the data with growing understanding. "Resonance frequencies?" "Exactly. The same molecular structure that makes it resistant to energy weapons makes it vulnerable to specific acoustic frequencies. Frequencies we can generate with modified industrial equipment." Across the city, in what had been a concert hall before the invasion, Dr. Sarah Kim was discovering something equally important about Zephyrian energy weapons. The acoustic properties that made the venue perfect for symphonies had proven ideal for analyzing the sound signatures of alien technology. "The energy discharge creates a distinct harmonic pattern," she explained to the assembled team of physicists and musicians who had volunteered for the project. "But more importantly, the charging cycle produces a subsonic frequency that precedes each shot by exactly 2.3 seconds. A young violinist named Marcus raised his hand. "So we can predict when they're about to fire?" "Better than that," Sarah grinned. "We can interfere with the charging cycle. The frequency is within the range of modified commercial speakers. If we can flood an area with the right counterfrequency, we can prevent the weapons from achieving full charge." The implications rippled through the scientific community within hours. Humanity's response to the invasion was unlike anything the Zephyrians had encountered because it was decentralized, adaptive, and built on the simple premise that any technology, no matter how advanced, followed the laws of physics. And humans, it turned out, were exceptionally good at finding creative applications for the laws of physics. In orbit above Earth, Subcommander Veltar watched her tactical displays with growing alarm as human activity reached levels that defied comprehension. The planet's surface was alive with construction projects, all apparently focused on creating larger and more sophisticated countermeasures against Zephyrian technology. "What are they building down there?" she asked her intelligence officer. The young Zephyrian's expression was troubled. "Honestly, Subcommander, we're not entirely sure. The construction appears to be a combination of military fortification and industrial manufacturing, but the scale is unprecedented. They're converting entire cities into what can only be described as weapons platforms." Veltar studied the orbital imagery in disbelief. In the space of a week, humans had transformed their urban centers into defensive networks that incorporated everything from subway systems to shopping malls. Skyscrapers have been converted into massive acoustic amplifiers, their glass facades modified to focus and direct sound waves. Underground transportation networks have been restructured into supply lines that could move personnel and equipment without exposure to orbital surveillance. Most disturbing of all, the humans seem to be having fun with it. "Subcommander," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving another transmission from the Human Academic Network. They're requesting a dialogue." Veltar's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Another demand for negotiation?" "No, ma'am. They're asking if we'd be interested in participating in what they call a scientific exchange. They want to discuss the theoretical implications of faster-than-light travel and its applications to theoretical physics." The subcommander stared at her communications officer in stunned silence. In the middle of an invasion, with alien warships hanging over their cities and their military forces in open rebellion, the humans wanted to talk about science. The transmission, when she reviewed it, was even more bewildering. It came from something called the International Committee for Extraterrestrial Scientific Exchange, and it was formatted like an academic conference invitation. The humans were offering to share their research on exotic matter physics in exchange for insights in a Zephyrian propulsion technology. They had included a preliminary agenda for the proposed discussion, complete with scheduled coffee breaks. Are they insane? Veltar wondered aloud. Her science officer, a pragmatic Zephyrian named Colmar, shook his head slowly. No, Subcommander. I think they're brilliant. They're trying to turn first contact into a peer review process. The realization was sobering. Humans weren't just resisting the invasion militarily. They were attempting to transform it into an intellectual exchange. It was a form of psychological warfare that the Zephyrian military manual had never contemplated. On Earth's surface, the human response continued to evolve in ways that confounded alien analysis. Military units had dissolved into smaller, more flexible groups that operated more like research teams than traditional soldiers. Each group specialized in exploiting specific vulnerabilities in Zephyrian technology, and they shared their discoveries with other units in real time. Colonel Martinez found himself commanding a unit that included theoretical physicists, sound engineers, and a jazz musician whose understanding of improvisation had proven invaluable in developing countermeasures against alien tactics. Their current project involved converting a city's emergency broadcast system into a weapon capable of disrupting Zephyrian neural implants. The implants operate on specific frequency ranges, Dr. Lisa Chun explained as she calibrated the modified radio equipment. If we can flood the area with the right electromagnetic patterns, we should be able to cause feedback loops that will disable their communication systems. Marcus, the jazz musician, studied the waveform patterns on his laptop. It's like a really complex improvisation. We need to stay ahead of their ability to adapt, keep changing the patterns faster than they can compensate. The colonel nodded, though he still found it surreal to be taking tactical advice from someone whose primary weapon was a trumpet. How long until you can implement this citywide? Give us 6 hours, Lisa replied. The hardest part is coordinating with the other research teams to make sure our frequencies don't interfere with their countermeasures. That coordination was perhaps humanity's greatest strength in the conflict. While the Zephyrians operated according to rigid military hierarchy and established doctrine, humans had created a fluid network of cooperation that could adapt to changing circumstances in real time. Social media platforms had been repurposed into tactical coordination networks. Gaming communities had applied their skills to developing strategies for asymmetric warfare. Online forums dedicated to science fiction had become think tanks for analyzing alien technology and predicting enemy tactics. Most remarkably, the entire effort was voluntary. No government had ordered the transformation of human society into a resistance network. It had simply emerged organically from millions of individual decisions to help defend their world. Admiral Kethvar reviewed the latest intelligence reports with a growing sense of unease that bordered on panic. The human resistance wasn't just effective, it was getting stronger with each passing day. More troubling still, it showed no signs of conforming to any recognizable pattern of warfare. They're not following established resistance protocols, he explained to his senior staff during an emergency strategy session. Every other species we've conquered has eventually reverted to hierarchical command structures under pressure. The humans are doing the opposite. They're becoming more decentralized and more collaborative. Science Officer Mordeth pulled up a holographic display showing human communication patterns. Admiral, our analysts believe the humans have essentially weaponized their own social structure. Their entire species appears to be functioning as a distributed problem-solving network focused on defeating us. The Admiral studied the data with growing alarm. The human communication network showed patterns of information flow that resembled nothing so much as a vast artificial intelligence, with each human serving as both a sensor node and a processing unit. How is this possible? He demanded. No biological species could maintain this level of coordination without centralized control. Actually, sir, Mordeath replied reluctantly. Our xenobiologists think it might be an emergent property of human social evolution. They appear to have developed what can only be described as a collective intelligence that emerges under stress. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrian Empire had always assumed that biological species required hierarchical organization to function effectively in crisis situations. But humans seemed to become more effective as their organization became more fluid and democratic. What are our options? Kethvar asked. His tactical officer, Commander Jek Tun, approached with obvious reluctance. Admiral, conventional military doctrine suggests we either escalate to planet-killing weapons or withdraw and request reinforcements. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in frustration. Planet-killing weapons would destroy the very resources the Empire sought to acquire, while requesting reinforcements would be an admission of failure that could end his career. But as he considered the alternatives, a new crisis emerged. Admiral, the communications officer called out urgently. We're receiving a priority transmission from the homeworld. High Command wants a status report. Admiral Kethvar composed himself before activating the quantum communicator. The image of Supreme Admiral Zekvar materialized in the command center, his ancient features stern with authority. Report, Admiral. Our sensors indicate you should have achieved total conquest of the target world days ago. Kethvar struggled to find words that would convey the reality of the situation without sounding like he was making excuses. Supreme Admiral, we have encountered unexpected complications. The indigenous species has proven more resilient than our models predicted. Zekvar's expression darkened. Elaborate. The humans appear to have developed countermeasures against our technology through a process of collaborative reverse engineering. They're using their entire global communication network as a military asset. The Supreme Admiral's silence stretched for long moments before he spoke again. Admiral, are you telling me that a pre-spaceflight species has achieved tactical parity with the Zephyrian Empire through what amounts to crowdsourcing? That would not be an inaccurate summary, Supreme Admiral. Another long silence. Then, Admiral, you have 48 hours to resolve this situation. If you cannot achieve conquest within that time frame, you will withdraw and await reinforcements. Is this understood? Understood, Supreme Admiral. As the communication ended, Admiral Kethvar found himself facing the most difficult decision of his military career. 48 hours to conquer a species that had turned their entire civilization into a weapon designed specifically to defeat everything the Zephyrian Empire thought it knew about warfare. For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, the Empire faced an enemy that was evolving faster than their ability to adapt to it. And the humans were just getting started? Dr. Emma Rodriguez had never imagined that her doctoral thesis on swarm intelligence would become the foundation for humanity's final counterstrike against an alien invasion. She stood in the converted underground mall that now served as Earth's primary coordination center, watching as her theoretical models were implemented on a planetary scale. The massive display screens showed real-time data from every continent. Millions of humans working in perfect coordination without any central authority, like a vast organism with distributed intelligence. Each person knew only their small part of the larger plan, but together they formed something that transcended the sum of its parts. Network integrity is holding at 97%, reported Dr. Kim Nakamura, whose background in computer networking had proven invaluable in organizing humanity's response. We're maintaining full coordination across all time zones. Emma nodded, still amazed by what they had accomplished. In less than 2 weeks, humanity had transformed from a collection of competing nation-states into a single, unified intelligence network focused on a single goal. Not just defending Earth, but demonstrating to the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. "What's the status on Project Resonance?" she asked. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Reeves looked up from her console, a grim smile on her face. "All acoustic arrays are in position. When we trigger the resonance cascade, every piece of Zephyrian technology on or around Earth will experience catastrophic molecular failure. The only question is whether we can get them all at once. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Human scientists had discovered that Zephyrian technology, while incredibly advanced, shared a common molecular structure that made it vulnerable to a specific resonance frequency. By coordinating acoustic arrays around the globe, they could create a standing wave pattern that would cause every alien device within Earth's atmosphere to literally shake itself apart at the molecular level. It was the kind of solution that could only have emerged from humanity's unique approach to problem solving: creative, collaborative, and completely unprecedented. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar faced the most humiliating moment of his military career. His tactical displays showed human activity levels that defied all rational analysis. The entire planet pulsed with coordinated activity, as if 8 billion humans had suddenly become neurons in a single vast brain. Admiral, Subcommander Veltar approached with obvious reluctance. Our xenopsychologists have completed their updated analysis of human behavior patterns. Kethvar accepted the report with dread. The previous analyses had been wrong about everything, and he suspected this one would be equally disturbing. The humans appear to be exhibiting what our scientists can only describe as emergent collective intelligence, Veltar explained. Under stress, their species doesn't fragment like others we've encountered. Instead, they coalesce into a single problem-solving entity that becomes more effective as more individuals join the network. The Admiral studied the psychological profile with growing horror. You're saying they become smarter when threatened? Not just smarter, sir. More coordinated, more creative, and more determined. It's as if conflict activates some kind of evolutionary adaptation that we've never encountered in any other species. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in frustration. 3,000 years of conquest have been built on the assumption that all species followed certain predictable patterns under pressure. But humans seem to operate according to completely different rules. What about their technological countermeasures? Growing more sophisticated by the hour, Admiral. They've reverse-engineered our energy weapons, developed acoustic countermeasures for our communications, and created resonance weapons that can disrupt our molecular technology. Most concerning, they're sharing all of this information freely across their entire species. The Admiral stared at the tactical displays showing Earth's defensive preparations. In 48 hours, the humans had accomplished more technological advancement than most species managed in centuries. And they had done it through pure collaboration, without the hierarchical command structures that the Zephyrian Empire considered essential for effective organization. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving another transmission from Earth. This one is different. The message, when it came through, was not from any government or military authority. It was from something called the Emergency United Earth Response Collective, and was addressed personally to Admiral Kethvar. Admiral, the message began, spoken by a woman whose voice carried calm authority. We know you're listening. We know you have 48 hours to resolve this situation before your superiors lose patience. We're prepared to offer you an alternative. Kethvar found himself leaning forward despite his better judgment. Continue the transmission. We propose a demonstration. You consider humans to be primitive, technologically inferior beings who should surrender in the face of superior force. We believe we've demonstrated that this assessment is incorrect. We suggest a test that will prove definitively which of us is correct. The Admiral's tactical officer looked up from his console. Sir, they're powering up some kind of planetary scale system. Energy readings are off the charts. On Earth's surface, the moment humanity had been preparing for finally arrived. In coordination centers around the globe, scientists and engineers made final adjustments to acoustic arrays that had been constructed in secret over the past week. The arrays used everything from concert hall acoustics to the resonance properties of subway tunnels, all synchronized by a network that spanned the entire planet. This is Dr. Rodriguez at Global Coordination, Emma announced over the worldwide communication network. All stations report ready status. Responses came in from every continent. Sydney ready. Moscow ready. New York ready. Lagos ready. São Paulo ready. The voices continued until representatives from every major population center on Earth had confirmed their readiness. 8 billion humans, working in perfect coordination, preparing to demonstrate something that had never been attempted in the history of galactic civilization. On my mark, Emma announced. 3, 2, 1, execute. Around the globe, acoustic arrays activated simultaneously. The resonance frequency the human scientist had calculated began building, creating standing wave patterns in Earth's atmosphere that focused and amplified until they achieved the precise harmonic necessary to disrupt Zephyrian molecular technology. The effect on the alien fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as every piece of Zephyrian technology began to vibrate. Warning alarms filled the command center as molecular bonds started to destabilize throughout the ship. All systems failing, his tactical officer reported. The resonance is causing molecular cascade failure across the entire fleet. But even as his ship began to shake apart around him, Kethvar realized that the humans had achieved something far more significant than a military victory. They had demonstrated a form of coordination and technological innovation that challenged everything the Zephyrian Empire thought it knew about intelligent life. Emergency retreat, he ordered. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. The Zephyrian fleet fled Earth's atmosphere as their technology literally fell apart around them. Ships designed to conquer planets were reduced to barely functional vessels struggling to reach the safety of deep space before their molecular structure completely collapsed. But as they retreated, another message reached them from Earth. Admiral Kethvar, came the calm voice of Dr. Emma Rodriguez. We could have destroyed your entire fleet just now. The resonance frequency that disrupted your technology could have been adjusted to cause complete molecular dissolution. We chose not to do so. The Admiral, standing in the ruins of his command center, listened with something approaching awe. We want you to understand something about humanity that your intelligence analysts missed, Emma continued. We don't fight because we enjoy violence. We fight because we refuse to accept that some problems can't be solved. Your empire has conquered 17 worlds because those species accepted defeat as inevitable. Humans don't believe in inevitable defeat. Admiral Kethvar found himself responding before he quite realized what he was doing. What do you want from us? We want you to take a message back to your empire, Emma replied. Tell them that Earth is under the protection of a species that treats impossible problems as personal challenges. Tell them that we've reverse-engineered your technology, developed countermeasures for your weapons, and created a planetary defense network that can disrupt your molecular technology at will. The Admiral nodded slowly, though he knew the humans couldn't see him. And then we want to talk. Not about surrender, not about conquest, but about the universe. You've mastered faster-than-light travel, and we're very interested in the physics behind that achievement. In exchange, we can share our insights into emergent intelligent systems and collaborative problem-solving. It was so utterly human that Kethvar almost found himself laughing despite the disaster that had befallen his fleet. In the middle of demonstrating their ability to destroy his ships, the humans were offering to share scientific discoveries. You're proposing a scientific exchange. We're proposing friendship, Emma replied. The galaxy is a big place, Admiral. Big enough for species that solve problems through conquest and species that solve problems through collaboration. We think there's room for both approaches, as long as the first group understands that the second group won't be conquered without a fight they're not prepared for. As his damaged flagship limped toward the edge of the solar system, Admiral Kethvar composed his report to High Command. It would be the most unusual after-action report in the history of the Zephyrian Empire. Supreme Admiral, he would write, I must report that the conquest of Earth has been indefinitely postponed. The indigenous species has demonstrated technological and organizational capabilities that exceed our current understanding of biological intelligence. They have developed countermeasures that render our technology ineffective and have done so through a form of collective problem-solving that our strategists never anticipated. However, I must also report that the humans have extended an offer of scientific and cultural exchange. They appear to be more interested in learning from us than in destroying us, despite having demonstrated the capability to do both. Recommendation: establish formal diplomatic contact with Earth and reassess our understanding of human capabilities. We may have encountered the first species in galactic history that represents a potential partner rather than a potential conquest. On Earth, as the alien fleet retreated beyond the outer planets, humanity began the complex process of returning to normal life. But it was a different kind of normal than had existed before the invasion. The collaborative networks that had formed to resist the aliens remained in place, now focused on exploration, scientific advancement, and preparing for the day when other voices from the stars might call. Dr. Emma Rodriguez stood in the converted mall that had coordinated humanity's defense, watching as the global communication network gradually shifted from military coordination to scientific collaboration. Research teams that had developed weapons were now focused on propulsion systems. Engineers who had built acoustic arrays were designing radio telescopes. "What happens now?" Dr. Kim Nakamura asked. Emma smiled, looking up at the displays showing human activity around the globe. The network that had defended Earth was already evolving, becoming something new and unprecedented in galactic history. A planetary-scale intelligence dedicated to peaceful exploration of the universe. "Now," Emma replied, "we show the galaxy what happens when 8 billion humans decide to solve the same problem together. We're going to build starships, Kim, and when we do, we're going to visit every species in the galaxy and ask them the same question we asked the Zephyrians." "Which question is that?" Emma's smile widened. "Want to be friends?" Far beyond Pluto's orbit, Admiral Kethvar received a final transmission from Earth as his fleet limped towards Zephyrian space. It was a simple message, but one that would echo through galactic civilization for generations to come. "To anyone listening, this is Earth. We are humanity. We have taken our first steps into a larger universe, and we come not as conquerors, but as friends. We believe that every problem has a solution, every conflict has a resolution, and every species has something valuable to contribute to our understanding of existence. We invite any civilization that shares these values to contact us. We have much to learn, and we hope something to teach. The universe is vast and full of wonders we have yet to discover. We propose that we discover them together." The message was transmitted on frequencies that would carry it to every corner of the galaxy, a declaration that would fundamentally change how advanced civilizations thought about first contact. For the first time in galactic history, a species had announced itself not through conquest or submission, but through an invitation to collaborate. And across the galaxy, species that had hidden in fear of the Zephyrian Empire began to consider the possibility that perhaps there was, indeed, a better way to explore the universe. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen.